All right, let's do this thing. So this is my first evening one. Doesn't look like I'm live yet. All right, we'll see here. Can't tell if I'm live yet or not. Looks like I am. This is my first evening broadcast. I'm like Dan Rather over here bringing you the evening news. So a few different things to get to today. Hopefully we get some people joining in. Hopefully the chat gets a little bit lively anyway. But a few different things I want to share this evening. Before I get started here, just want to make sure I got everything dialed in and everything seems to be working. I'm getting a little bit better with the software here, so that's good news. Let's see. Big news today out of Wisconsin, my home state. I have recently just moved away from Wisconsin. I'm really sad to see what's going on up there. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Kenosha. We're going to talk about the shooting that took place and the aftermath of that shooting. We're going to talk about some of the stuff that's going on in the other cities in this country. I have spent the day just kind of following some of the bigger mainstream media outlets, and I just can't believe the relative silence on what's going on around the country. I'm surprised by how quiet mainstream media is in lieu of what is really not even... It's not really even it almost feels like an insurrection. It doesn't feel like just protests anymore. Now, that may be overstating it. That may sound hyperbolic, but I don't feel like that's the case. When you think about the Civil Rights Act or the Civil Rights Movement, that took place over from this. If you want to look at the Rosa Parks incident as the start of the Civil Rights Movement, what would you say? You would say that you have 10 years roughly of relatively peaceful protesting throughout the country as we push for equal rights. So to say an insurrection based on the amount of time that this is going on, no, but in terms of the level of violence, it's very concerning. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what's going on in Kenosha. We're going to talk about police violence. We're going to talk about all of that, kind of what's going on around the country as well. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the upcoming election, which, obviously we're going to hit on that pretty consistently. We want to cover that as the election gets closer and closer and the controversy ramps up. And we got the Republican National Convention taking place right now. So, that's definitely something we want to keep an eye on. So we're going to talk about a little bit about the election. I will always be going over some Joe Jorgensen stuff. Today's Joe Jorgensen topic is going to be neutrality and peace. I'm going to kind of be going through her website, which is joe20.com, and I'm going to be talking about one issue at a time, sort of walking through her site, each one of the issues, and kind of trying to hit on a different issue of hers on a daily basis. That's kind of my goal as far as Joe Jorgensen is concerned. So like I said, I want to talk about the Kenosha shooting, how this is being portrayed in the media, what everybody's already saying, the comments that are already coming out, and what's going on in the other cities around the country. So when we get started here, let's talk about Kenosha, and I'm going to get right into it here with the story coming out of Milwaukee. This is the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, and this is the first article I'm pulling up because to me, this is the article that is the most honest and has the highest level of journalistic integrity, quite frankly, because there's nothing here in the headline that's incendiary. Quite frankly, to me, it just tells what happened. I've watched the video, and if you haven't, I caution you, the video is disturbing. It is violent. But I would, if you're interested in what's happening and you want to have a real perspective on it, I do encourage you to watch the video because you have to be able to interpret what the news is telling you. So the Kenosha police shoot man video of incident appears to show officer firing several shots into his back at close range. That's exactly what happened. There were multiple officers on the scene. He's walking around his vehicle. When the video starts, the weapons of these officers are already drawn, which leads me to believe with absolute certainty that there is definitely something that happened that led the officers to draw their weapons. Officers don't typically just draw their weapons. there is a reason that an officer pulls their gun. So when the video starts, the officers already have their weapons drawn. Something prompted that to happen. The other thing I want to point out is that it appears that he was called to the scene, or not he, the police were called to the scene. They had a reason to be there, and they had a reason to be engaging with this person. This isn't like an Elijah McCain situation where a black man's just walking down the street and gets, bothered by the police. There was a domestic disturbance. The police were responding to that. So police shot a man Sunday evening, setting off unrest in the city after a video appeared to show the officer firing several shots at close range into the man's back. The shooting victim has been identified as Jacob Blake, a black man, by Wisconsin officials. He was in serious conditions at Freud Turt Hospital in Milwaukee as of early Monday morning. The Wisconsin Department of Justice's Division of Criminal Investigation said early Monday that the involved officers have been placed on administrative leave, which is a very standard practice. That's it. Those are the facts. So in the video, the officer's weapons are drawn as the video opens. The man is walking around from the passenger side of his vehicle to the driver's side of the vehicle. The officers are clearly trying to get him to stop, and they actually had already used a taser on him to try and get him to stop and to obey whatever orders they were giving him. Now, they don't wear body cams, so there's not going to be any body cam footage. At some point, some additional video is going to come out and show what happened prior to the guns being drawn. But from the scene, you can see that the officers are giving him an order. He is not obeying the order. According to one story, they attempted to tase him. The taser was not effective. He comes around, he opens the driver's door of his vehicle and is reaching into his vehicle. At that point, that is the decision point where we have to determine whether or not the officer is justified in shooting at that moment. Is he reaching in there to grab a weapon? He's obviously not obeying police orders. The police have a reason to be having a conversation with him because there was a domestic situation. He wasn't following police orders. And then he opens the door and reaches into his vehicle. Are they supposed to wait until he turns around? The taser didn't work. Are they supposed to wait until he turns around? If he turns around with a weapon in his hand and fires and kills the officer or doesn't turn around and kills one of the other officers who are there around the vehicle, it's a tough situation. To say that this was a completely unjustified shooting, I think is unfair. I think that a full investigation needs to be done. I think we need to find out what was going on. We need to get as much video as we can. What were the orders that were being given? The man is expected to survive. He is in the hospital in stable condition. He's expected to survive so that he will be able to speak. We will actually be able to get his side of the story as to what his thought process was, why he was reaching into his vehicle. So, like I said, there's a lot more to this story that has to come out yet. I don't believe that it's fair to say that the shooting was immediately unjustified. I think the biggest issue I have in watching the video is that there were multiple officers, and his back was to an officer. And so did that officer have an opportunity to take this person to the ground without firing his weapon? Is this person high? Is he on PCP? Is there something going on here where the taser didn't work that puts the officer at an unusually high level of risk? But there's multiple officers there. Could they have wrestled him? Could they have taken him to the ground? They do have a duty to protect the public. They also have a duty to protect that person, even if he is a suspect at the time, which we don't even know if that was the case. I would have liked to have seen that. And I know that puts the officer at risk, but that's the job. Now we have a man shot in the back and we have riots taking place. So as we move forward through the story, rioting in Kenosha over Jacob Blake's shooting, state of emergency, curfew declared. Protests and riots have broken out in Wisconsin after police were recorded shooting a black man several times as he attempted to enter his vehicle. Large crowds gathered outside the Kenosha police station and protesters clashed with police officers at the scene of the officer-involved shooting. Vehicles were also set on fire, and there are reports of looting and people vandalizing the local courthouse as protesters voiced their anger at the latest incident of a black man being shot by police 3 months after the death of 46-year-old George Floyd sparked worldwide protests. Kenosha police confirmed there was an officer-involved shooting. This is all stuff we know already. Police say they provided immediate aid to the man who was shot, 29-year-old Jacob Blake. Blake was taken by flight for life to the hospital, where he is in serious condition. His condition has since been changed to stable. But the riots are here. The riots are upon us. So this is the video. This is in Newsweek. So there's a video there. Like I said, I'm not going to play the video back because I think it's just a little disturbing. I'm not, if you want to see it, you can go see it. But as you can see, there are multiple officers. He's walking around his vehicle. He goes walking around his vehicle around the front to his driver's door. This officer had an opportunity to cut him off. I don't know. I feel like from a tactical perspective, better training may have put them in a position where this guy never had an opportunity to get to the front door and open his vehicle. This is a training situation. This guy's obviously not listening to the police. He obviously is going to be taken into custody, but why give him an opportunity to get into the vehicle? I think that's a mistake, but it's easy to watch this thing and go hindsight's 2020 and all that stuff. So this is out of the Daily Mail. Of course, they're going to be very incendiary. White cop shoots unarmed black father in the back 7 times as his children watch. That's a true article. That's a true headline. I don't know that it tells the whole story, and I think that's very inflammatory, and I think that's obviously on purpose. It's a clickbait type of news source, so that's what you're going to get from them. But that's what's going on in Kenosha, and the riots are the real deal up there. It's no joke. They've got serious. They burned a car dealership. Like I said, they destroyed some vehicles. There's rumors that there's going to be another protest this evening. There's actually a Facebook post showing that they're going to be gathering people together to go back out there. They are planning on rioting, absolutely planning on violence. And so it's going to be a troubling evening, couple of nights for Kenosha. But I think this is also going to spark up violence and give a renewed sense of purpose to rioters in other places. I think that's the scary part of all of this, is that I feel like a lot of the country felt like these things were finally starting to settle down. We were finally getting to return at least to some sense of normalcy in terms of violence. If you're paying attention to the local affiliate news stations, you know that really wasn't 100% true. That we have had consistent violence pretty much since this has ended, at least in some spots. But at the bottom line is, I think we're going to see renewed violence. And I think you're going to see new energy given to these protests and to these, to the violence that's taking place in all these different cities as a result of this. So I'm going to go through some of these other stories that are taking place here in Denver. Denver city leaders vowed to hold suspects accountable. This was a riot. This is CBS, August 23rd. So this is Sunday. Denver city leaders hosted a news conference on Sunday to discuss arrests and destruction from riots on Saturday night. A group of about 50 to 75 people rioted outside the Denver Police Department headquarters. They brought weapons to the table. They had guns. They brought explosives, axes, machetes, and had one intent purpose, and that was to harm our officers, said Murphy Robinson, Denver's public safety director. I want these anarchists to hear me clearly and loudly. This will not be tolerated in our city. You are not welcome here. Robinson went on to say that the city plans to do everything in its power to stop these violent acts. Effective immediately, I'm suspending the command PR bond jail inmate cap I put in place due to COVID-19 in March, he said. The cap aimed to prevent the spread of the coronavirus in jail. The group was calling for the department to be abolished. This is another abolish the police movement. I've talked about this in the past. I've talked about this in another video. We know for a fact that this is a serious issue because people are dying as a result of the police being pushed out of these cities. I did one of my prior streams. I talked about a couple in Minneapolis, a black couple in Minneapolis, prominent members of the community actually suing the city of Minneapolis to make sure that they maintain a police force there. This is not necessarily representative of the black community. This is not necessarily representative of what the people want. There was a picture on here earlier. It's gone now. The protests it's all white people. Everything I saw, I'm looking at these protests, I'm like, these people are all white. Anyway, the group was calling for the department to be abolished. Multiple buildings suffered damage, such as broken windows. One of these buildings was Quiznos at 14th and Cherokee. It was boarded up Sunday morning. You can see the violence. You can see from the photos here, the violence taking place, fires being started. So some individuals also set fire to headquarters. I want to speak to you as a black man and as a Denver native, Robinson said. The narrative that these anarchists are marching for justice for black lives is frankly false. The public needs to know that you do not represent us. Stop using the color of my skin to tear up my city. Chemical agents were deployed to control the crowd. Denver police officials say they've arrested 12 people and issued 1 citation. I can't say this clearly enough. These violent riots in these other cities. Look, Take what's going on in Kenosha and set that aside for just a moment. What's going on in Kenosha is clearly going to be directly related to the shooting of Jacob Blake. We hope that the investigation is thorough, transparent, and fair so that justice is served in this case, however that may look. However, what's going on in Denver, what's going on in these other cities is not related to Black Lives Matter. And this is not meant to further the cause of black people. That's not what this is about. These protesters have a completely separate political agenda from Black Lives Matter and from the, like I said, furthering of the black community. That's not what this is about. So here's another. Downtown Detroit. Detroit police arrest 42 during downtown protest after weeks of calm. Detroit will breathe. Organizer Tristan Taylor said police in Riot gear attacked protesters after marchers blocked Woodward Avenue in downtown Detroit. Now, this is important. Blocking traffic is not a peaceful protest. If you block traffic, the police are going to arrest you. You can't block traffic. You can march in public spaces. You can march on sidewalks. But if you block traffic, then you're going to be ordered to disperse. And if you don't disperse, the police are going to use tactics to disperse you. You're not a victim in that circumstance, all right? Stop playing the victim. You're not a victim because you marched and the police did their job and dispersed you when you were blocking traffic. That's what's supposed to happen. They haven't clashed since July 10th after Hakeem Littleton was killed on Detroit's west side after police returned fire. Littleton shot at police at nearly point-blank range after his friend was arrested. There is no reason, there's no justification for this protest. You understand, as you read the story, the last time police and protesters clashed, whoops, did I kill this story? I did. Look at me. See if I can get back to it here. There we go. What are they protesting? Somebody was shot after firing at the police. You can't fight. What's the nature of this protest? This is what happened in Chicago with the other protests where they lied about what was going on. Somebody fired at the police returned fire, injured him. The man wasn't even killed. And that's when all that rioting and looting broke out just a little bit ago in Chicago. We're getting to a point where any police action against a person of color of any type is now cause for violence, is now cause for rioting. That's unacceptable. That's an unacceptable way to look at this stuff. He said police in riot gear appeared south of the gathering and marched north up Woodward. As they got close to us, they started throwing tear gas at us, Taylor said. Then there was a flash bomb. Then they went in with riot shields and batons. Now, somebody on the scene was saying that the officers warned them several times to disperse. 44 people were arrested. And I feel like when you read the stories out of Denver and Detroit, for a long time, I think a lot of these liberal governors, mayors, whatever, were standing aside and letting these protesters go, really in the name of and for the good of their own political careers, feeling like the far left is taking control of the narrative. And so they're just going to stand aside and let this happen. I think what you're seeing here is an outcry from the citizens of these cities saying it's enough. And you're seeing more arrests and you're seeing these mayors starting to stand up. I know nobody wants to do it. I know nobody wants to give credit to Donald Trump, but the fact that he was going to send feds in probably motivated some of these mayors to take action because a lot of these citizens don't want this. They're tired of the violence. They're tired of the riots and the burning and the destruction of property. They're tired of not feeling safe in their own cities. And a lot of them were probably going to welcome Trump sending federal law enforcement in there to quell all this violence. And before that happened, these mayors felt like they had to step up and do something in order to prevent this, because otherwise Donald Trump would be standing here taking credit for putting down this violence. And I think at the end of the day, that's what we want. That's what we want to see happen. We want to see this silence go down. So this guy, Kevin Quart, says he was offering protesters a safe place in his Woodward apartment building when Detroit police tackled him and beat him last night. He was arrested and issued 3 tickets. He says to plan to file a complaint. Please tell me they will investigate alleged abuses, whatever the case may be. Stay out of it. This stuff is turning violent. This is what's going to happen to you. Stay out of it. You're not a victim. You're trying to martyr yourself. I don't feel sorry for you. Stay out of it. Stay out of these violent protests. These protests have no business happening in Detroit. These people are protesting a person who was shot because he shot at police. Well, there's no justification for this protest. What are you doing? This has nothing to do with helping African Americans. That's not what this is about. Not anymore. Meanwhile, in our favorite, whatever you want to call it, riot headquarters, Portland, 87 nights. Night 87, riot declared at North Precinct, tear gas used, 23 arrests. Portland's cracking down too, 23 arrests. For weeks this stuff was going on and nobody was getting arrested. There was no accountability. And it really felt like these liberal cities were just turning, these mayors were just turning their cities over to the protesters. Yes, I'm trying to center myself on the screen. It really felt like the cities were just, these mayors were just turning their cities over to these protesters. And eventually it was enough. I want you to take a look. This is the photo that I was trying to pull up earlier. There are no white people in this picture, or no black people in this. I'm trying to find a single black face in this protest, in this picture. This is night 87's protest ends in riot, 23 arrests. Come on. This is not what this is about anymore. Demonstrators marched to the Portland Police Bureau's North Precinct where riot was declared shortly after 11 p.m. Sunday, eventually leading to police deploying tear gas and arresting 23 people on the 87th night of political unrest. God be with everybody in Portland right now. All the citizens of Portland. There's a video earlier that I watched earlier today of a woman who lives in Portland. And I could tell by what she was saying that this is a woman who sides with Black Lives Matter. This is a woman who is a liberal. I did a video yesterday and I talked about Donald Trump flipping states, flipping cities, maybe even New York. And this is what I mean. These are liberals out here. This woman was they were counter protesters protecting the federal building. This woman in this interview was clearly a liberal. She clearly sided with Black Lives Matter, but in her mind, enough was enough. And they're literally standing in between these protesters in these buildings to try and bring peace to their city. Do you believe these people are still going to go vote Democrat? All of them, especially in tight districts. I'm saying that Trump lost Minnesota by 1.5 and he could definitely flip Minnesota. And I don't see anybody who voted for Trump last time. And I know the left is trying to put these videos out of people flipping and all that stuff, but I don't see it happening. I don't think that you're going to have a mass walkaway on the Republican side. I think you're going to see a mass walkaway on the Democrat side. And like I said, a state like Minnesota that was close, that was 1.5, I could definitely see Minnesota going Republican. I could definitely see it. When you have liberal, prominent members of the black community in Minnesota suing the city to make sure that the police stay on the job, you've got a problem if you're a Democrat. You've got a real problem. So the protests continue. The violence continues. And I don't know how this ends. I really don't. I don't know what's going to happen if Donald Trump wins this election. I don't know what happens if Joe Biden wins this election. I think if Biden wins this election, we're going to see a complete surrender to the left, to the far left. I think the mayors, once again, will be emboldened to stand aside and turn their cities over to the protesters. And I think the protests will continue. I don't think Biden's far enough to the left for these far left people. The far left part of the Democrat Party is not happy with Joe Biden, and they're going to continue to demand things that may not happen. They're going to continue to make lists that aren't going to be met. And Joe Biden's not far enough to the left, and I think that he will embolden the far left, and these riots will continue if Joe Biden ends up winning. I think that a lot of people view a Donald Trump victory as, oh no, if Donald Trump wins, we're going to see more violence, more of this stuff going on. I don't necessarily think that's the case. What I think you're going to see is actually, if Donald Trump wins re-election, I think you're going to see law and order return in a hurry, because I think at that point, Donald Trump will be emboldened, and I think you'll see a mass deployment of federal agents into the cities. Agree with it or don't agree with it, I think that's what will happen. And I think things will get quiet in a hurry. And I think he'll be emboldened. I think right now, a lot of far left is trying to antagonize him into a conflict that will hurt his reelection chances. I think that's part of what's going on here. But riots, I said it yesterday, I'll say it again, riots help conservatives. Riots help Republicans. Peaceful demonstrations gather sympathy for Democrats. Riots create sympathy for Republicans because people at the end of the day want law and order and they want normalcy. Here's an interesting screen or a little bit of information. I'm going to try and I'll put this one in the comments after I'm done with the stream here. this is part of the reason. This is one of the main reasons I'm voting for Joe Jorgensen, and one of the main reasons that I am not a supporter of the Black Lives Matter movement. I found this interesting. Now, keep in mind, everything you find on the internet, you got to take with a grain of salt, right? But I found this interesting website, Mapping Police Violence. And it breaks down, you can literally go state by state, even city by city, and you can look at police violence. So I vote Libertarian. Why? I vote Libertarian because we don't have a race problem in this country. There's a ton of statistics here, and you can go through it. And yeah, there is definitely a disproportionate number of African Americans impacted by police violence. And if you break out those statistics, then people on the other side are going to start saying, well, they commit all the violence. I'm not going to get into the statistical argument. I can look at statistics and they can support whatever side I believe. I can find a statistic to back that up. Here's one thing that we know for a fact. So here is police killings by, and then I didn't enter a department. I just put in a state. Okay. And this is what I want you to see. This is by state. So this is in Ohio. From 2013 to 2019, police in Ohio killed 215 people. These were not all unjustified. Okay, don't. I'm not saying let's investigate every one of these killings because they're all unjustified and the police are running and gunning and just gunning people down in the streets. That's not the case. 215 people killed over the course of 6 years in Ohio. Let's take a look here at New York. 155 people, and then you can divide this up by race. Click. Right? In New York, more black people were killed than white people. And I don't have this, it doesn't give the exact number. I suppose it went down here. Or there's another place where you can look at it. But it kind of breaks it out in terms of, you could see that. So let's take a look at Indiana. We'll go by race. So here's black, here's white. And this here looks like more white people were killed. The reason I bring this up, okay, as a libertarian, the reason I bring this up is because I don't want to see 124 people killed by the police in a state. Here's Louisiana by race. Black, white, unknown race. Look at all the white people killed. Unknown race, Hispanic. 148 people were killed. 148 American citizens were killed by armed agents of the government. 148 human beings lost their lives in Louisiana. I don't care about the race. As a nation, we need to stop caring about the race. That's why I'm a libertarian. That's why I'm getting very bothered by the number of libertarians who are starting to speak woke. This is the problem. It's not a race issue. It's not a black versus white issue. That's not what's going on. What's going on is we have a law enforcement issue. We have a too many laws in our country issue. You can go down through here state by state by state. So let's go to, I don't know, let's go to South Dakota. There's probably not as many, 25 people in South Dakota. Let's take a look at Minnesota by race. Look how many the number of white people killed in Minnesota is significantly higher than the number of black people killed in Minnesota. Well, there's more white people in Minnesota and it's disproportionate here. Like I said, statistics, 84 people, 84 Americans, 84 human beings lost their lives. What are we doing wrong in this country that our police are having to kill this many people? That's the question. It's not about black and white. And I've answered this question many times, and I'm going to keep railing on it. And this is why I'm going to keep encouraging people to vote libertarian. Because if you want to end the violence for real, you've got to end the police state. We live in a police state. The police interact with civilians in this country millions of times a year. It's not like the police are only talking to 100,000 people or having 100,000 interactions. We're talking millions and millions of police interactions with civilians every single year. I think back to the shooting that took place in Minneapolis, Philando Castillo, and I'm sorry if I'm not getting the name right. I just thought about this shooting as I was discussing this. This guy got pulled over supposedly because his brake light was out. That's not why he got pulled over. He got pulled over because he was a black man and they thought drugs. He got pulled over because of the war on drugs. If a police officer is looking to serve the public and is pulling this person over because his taillight is out, that interaction is pretty simple. The officer is going to pull the guy over. When the gentleman puts his window down, he's going to say, hey, I just wanted to let you know your brake light's out. That's getting pulled over because your brake light's out. Let me get a water here. Excuse me. Sorry about that. That is a public service. That is serve and protect. How does a brake light pullover end in a man's death? It ends in a man's death because I want to see your ID. Where are you going? What are you doing? Because maybe I can figure out a way to search your car and maybe I can get a drug bust and I can put that on my little record when I'm going up for promotion. That's what's going on in this country. We're fighting a war on drugs. And because we're fighting a war on drugs, we're giving police as many reasons as possible to interact with the public. Over the last 3 or 4 years, white deaths are starting to increase, and they're moving away from rural or urban areas and out into the suburbs and the rural communities. Why? I just moved here from a rural area in Wisconsin, and one of the big issues up there is the meth epidemic. Methamphetamines are moving into rural communities. And I say end the war on drugs, and here's why. You end the war on drugs because it stops this drug dealing violence that the police need to fight. We need to end this war, and we need to stop the prolific. Everybody says if you end the war on drugs, you're gonna have more drug use, you're gonna have more addiction. There's no evidence of that. Every country, everybody who's done it has seen positive results. Portugal is the best example. The point I'm trying to make, and I often get sidetracked, and I apologize, but the point I'm trying to make is that we need to stop fighting this war on drugs, and we need to stop dividing this police violence into race and stop making it a race issue because it is an out-of-control state issue. New York, 155 people, plenty of white people. That's just a race issue, folks. So you can just divide these up by race. Oh, Massachusetts, 56 people killed. These are police killings. This isn't what we're supposed to be. Look how many wiped this West Virginia. It's insane. 74 people killed. 74 Americans, 74 citizens lost their lives at the hands of armed government agents. We need less police on the street because we need less laws. That's how you solve this problem. And the only candidate who's talking about that is Joe Jorgensen, period. So we can go back and forth about Republicans and Democrats, and I want libertarians to stop speaking woke and start being libertarian again, because libertarians are not about race. They're not about identity. Libertarians are about the individual, and the color of skin is irrelevant. And libertarians should understand that the reason that this is happening is simply because our state is out of control, not because our state is inherently racist. That's what we need to be talking about right now. So, oops, I flipped over to my personal Facebook. Oh, hope you didn't see anything you shouldn't have seen there. So I want to get in here and talk about Joe Jorgensen just a bit. Today is neutrality and peace. Since we're talking about violence on our streets, let's talk about violence around the world. This is my little pitch for Joe Jorgensen today. I will end my live streams just briefly talking about Joe Jorgensen and trying to hit every one of these topics that are really critical in the upcoming election. Turn America into one giant Switzerland, armed and neutral. With all the military force needed to defend America's shores and soil against foreign attackers or invaders, armed and trained, able and ready to defend the life, liberty, and property of Americans against foreign aggressors. National defense means defending our nation, our country, the United States of America. Military self-defense for America is a good and necessary thing. Our country could not exist without it. Libertarians are not pacifists, and we're not isolationists. This is the common misconception about the Libertarian Party, particularly when it comes to our military. Our goal is to not have the United States waging war all over the world. And quite frankly, we know that both parties support global warfare. They support the global war machine. Joe Jorgensen does not. If you want to talk about military spending pushing over $1 trillion when you take into consideration DHS and TSA, when you take those things into consideration, we're talking about over $1 trillion of our wealth being spent on the military. That's almost half of what your income taxes are going for. That's about half the discretionary budget of the United States of America. It's ridiculous. It's unsustainable, and it can't be done. And the only candidate who has any real desire to end that is Joe Jorgensen. We worry about being isolationist, but we are not going to be an isolationist nation. What we need is trade. It's okay to trade with everybody. We should not be embargoing people. We should not be sanctioning people. We should be exercising as much free trade as possible, because if engage and trade, even with those nations whose politics we don't agree with, we will form closer relationships with them. We'll form economic bonds with them that makes warfare not viable. It makes warfare not a profitable thing for them. It makes warfare unappealing to them because they don't want to break up an economic partnership they have with the United States. So we need to be trading with these countries. Not only that, but wealth brings education, wealth brings civility. And if we can take some of these despot countries out of poverty and out of the dark ages and bring them into the light and trade with them, we may find a different path to peace than just intimidation and military force. So Joe Jorgensen, joe20.com is the website. Please go check it out. If this is your first time watching one of my streams, please leave a comment. Let me know that you came to visit for the first time. If you like my content, please subscribe, like it, share it. Tell your friends. I'm hoping to get to 200 subscribers at some point here in the near future. So please hit the sub button. Like I said, share the content. I really appreciate those of you who came by, stuck around, and listen to what I had to say. I will be back tomorrow evening, 7 o'clock. I'm trying to do a noon, but I do have some stuff going on. I may not be able to get a noon one out, but I'll definitely be on 7 o'clock Eastern time every night this week. I'm really trying to figure out what's better, if I should be doing 7 o'clock or if I should be doing noon, or I'm sorry, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So last week I did a bunch of 3 o'clock in the afternoons. This week I'm going with 7 o'clock in the evening as my time to jump on. It looks like somebody just got on recently, just catching me at the end here. So for that, I do apologize. Go back and watch from the beginning. I hope you enjoy the content. Again, if you're new, please subscribe to the channel. And I will see you guys tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock Eastern. Thanks, and have a good night.